So here's the deal. The Lakers just won another championship. Okay, obviously, the game's still got to be played, and anything can happen in a seven-game series. There's a lot of good teams in the West and in the NBA for that matter, but it's just obscene to me that people aren't going absolutely bananas that the Lakers just got Russell Westbrook for what's essentially a poo poo platter for them. I mean, this is a team that's a year out of winning a championship. Last year, obviously, major injury issues, but look, a team with Anthony Davis and LeBron has a great chance to win a title every year. Maybe not for 5 or more years like they were hoping, but for the foreseeable next few, absolutely. And you take that group and you give them not Rajon Rondo at point guard, who they won the title with, not Dennis Schroeder, a selfish asshole that no one likes playing with, but Russell freaking Westbrook. Just a reminder, Russell Westbrook was essentially written off when he was traded to Houston in the first place, has more or less been a top 10 overall player still the last couple seasons. After leaving Oklahoma City when people thought his career was on the downswing. He carried a Rockets team in the bubble, was the best player for them then, yes, better than James Harden. And after being hampered by early season injuries and the 17-32 start, willed the Washington Wizards to the playoffs. Russell Westbrook is a force of nature. He's a criminally underrated defender, see up top. Obviously a relentless competitor, rebounder, finisher, transition force, tremendous teammate. LeBron loves him. LA guy. It's a match made in heaven. LeBron's aging, obviously can't carry as much of a load as he did last season. Can't get out and play with a ton of pace. But Russ can. The one thing he can't do very well, obviously, is shoot. Prompting some to say the Lakers would have been better off with Buddy freaking Hield. To which I respectfully reply, are you shitting me? Look, Buddy's a heck of a shooter, but it's time we come face to face with an unfortunate truth. The dude's a loser. I don't mean that personally. I don't mean that as a character flaw. He still has time to rewrite his history and prove me wrong, but he's now clashed with Dave Yeager and Luke Walton, won a grand total of 0 playoff games in his time in Sacramento, and both coaches at times chose to finish games with him on the bench, leading to a conclusion that all the PERs and true shooting percentages miss. There is something missing with him. Whether it be defensive awareness, intensity, execution, overall trustworthiness from a coach's perspective, there's just something borderline intangible that coaches do not like about Buddy Hield, particularly when games matter most. Which is why, truthfully, Russell Westbrook was likely laughing maniacally at the people that said the Lakers should have got Buddy instead of him. He's just nowhere near the kind of impactful guy that Russ is. Can he stand in the corner and make threes? Can he be hyper efficient and light up some of the Bleacher Report accounts with 30-point games on 10 threes, whatever? Sure. Does he provide spacing? Absolutely. But the Lakers aren't a big three team with Braun, Wade, and Bosh just needing complementary Battier-type pieces. They're a big two that needed a third banana, especially with Braun and AD's injury issues, Braun's age. They needed another force of nature, and that's what Russ is. Now, if they get Buddy to be the fourth piece with that, to be the elite shooter to combine with those guys, perfect. He could thrive in that role, maybe. But in terms of the right guy to pair with LeBron and Anthony Davis, that's Russell Westbrook, 100 out of 100 times. What did the Lakers prove 2 years ago? What did Giannis and the Bucks prove this year? Unstoppable forces like LeBron, Giannis, etc., can dominate playoff games, even clearly without being elite shooters. While having guys like Danny Green, KCP, Connaughton, whoever that can make shots matters, you take a dominant all-around player like Russ over a one-trick pony like Hield any day of the week. Anyway, back to the trade at hand. Kyle Kuzma just did not fit on the Lakers. For the Wizards or whatever team he gets routed to, I view him kind of like a late lottery pick in this year's draft. He just turned 26. We know he's at least a competent bench NBA player who can give you some scoring spurts. What we don't know is really, will he ever be much more than that? Maybe he can do it. Maybe finally having that consistent role, that consistent almost 40 minutes, 20 shots that he seems to think he's deserving will prove that he's, some superstar scorer and, Tatum-like player as he envisions himself, but that seems to be unlikely at this point. The Lakers, bottom line, just aren't shedding tears losing him. I mean, he had an opportunity to be that third banana in LA to still provide them with a ton of scoring, especially, games without Bron, games without AD, and he just never was a model of consistency. He was fine, he was okay, but he hasn't seemed to have that next gear in him to just be a consistent, reliable, really good starter. Montrezl Harrell, look, I was a big Trez fan. I went as far as to say that I would have given him a max before his playoff faltering with the Clippers. But he just seems to have kind of lost his way as a player. Again, like Kuzma, clearly there's a lot of potential there. But from the Lakers' perspective, I mean, this was a guy getting DNP coaches' decisions to Marc Gasol in the playoffs. I mean, they got close to nothing out of him. When he had to give up aspirations of his, wanting $20 million deals to take a measly 9-something million with the Lakers, I mean, the assumption was that was rock bottom, that he'd tremendously outplay that deal for LA and then get a much bigger deal next offseason. But that didn't happen. He actually played so mediocrely that opting into that same contract for this coming season became his best option. So now Trez is really at a moment of truth. Reestablish himself as one of the hardest playing, toughest bigs in the league and play with that relentless energy that made him Sixth Man of the Year, he'll get some big deal after the season. Continue to kind of flounder around, not play enough defense to make him a valued rotation player? I mean, talk about two ends of the spectrum. He could be finding himself on near minimum deals pretty soon. He's at an inflection point. For the Wizards, doesn't really seem to make a ton of sense. I mean, you have Thomas Bryant locked in, who I admittedly don't like at all, but, he's supposedly your 5 for the future. You have Daniel Gafford, more on him in a minute, but a dude that looked like an all-star for his couple-month stint in D.C. And now with Harrell, that's 3 guys that basically can only play the 5 spot, only one of whom, Bryant, has any stretchability whatsoever. KCP, perfect 5th starter, meaning he was a great Laker, a star in his role, but likely won't be nearly as effective in DC because he'll be asked to do too much. He'll be overcast as a third-ish piece. He isn't that dude. He can't dribble, can't create anything in ISOs. He can spot up, nail shots from LeBron and Rondo, and do the dirty work defensively. Without an elite shot creator in DC, his offense is going to suffer, and the ultimate role player looks worse when he's got to be a bigger offensive threat than he really is. The Lakers will likely miss him the most of anyone in this deal, but the fact that he was a perfect 5th man also means theoretically he's replaceable. It should not be hard for Rob Pelinka to find a KCP type. Even if it's midseason, on the buyout market, ring-chasing vet min, he'll find somebody that can do that role. For the Wizards, in terms of this deal, again, I just can't fathom not even getting a high first in return for Russell Westbrook. I mean, I know what people say about the contract. I know there's some injury questions going forward. Sure, there's a level of risk that comes with him and a level of that deal that, teams don't want to take on. But you essentially fleece Houston ultimately in a deal that people initially thought would be pretty even. As Russ, despite some dings, proves to be far more durable than the heavily damaged John Wall, and also far more productive overall, and then turn around and lose him for a collection of basically unwanted goods after one season? As much as it pains me to say this, the Wizards made a terrible mistake not bringing back Scott Brooks. No, I'm not being held at gunpoint. Scott Brooks, no, is not a good coach. Wes Unseld is likely better than him, but not bringing back Scotty made Russ want out. and maybe will cost you Bradley Beal eventually too. Wes is better, but he's not cost you Russell Westbrook better. Certainly not eventually cost you Bradley Beal better. Brooks, for all his shortcomings in preparation, play calling, blah, 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 was well liked by players and could command a locker room. Russ loved him. Beal seemingly did too. They should have just given him a small 3-year deal or something to ride out this group for the next few years and then see what happens after. Now, make no mistake, losing Russ will have an impact far more than just immediate production. The aforementioned Daniel Gafford, he didn't just remarkably decide to go from nearly out of the rotation for a crappy Bulls team to a world beater for the Wizards. Russ had a massive amount to do with his success. From demanding greatness and a relentless motor out of him, to creating more dump-offs and lobs than Gafford will see the rest of his career, Russ does deserve a lion's share of the credit for Gafford's success. Same with Rui Hachimura, a talented young piece that made a pretty decent leap in year 2. Having Russ around is hugely valuable for young pieces like that need to learn to be killers every night like Russ is. Maybe Rui still makes a leap to becoming a solid third banana. Maybe Gafford still builds on last year's success to carve out a good role, but I feel pretty confident in saying those guys both would have been better off for sure next year and likely for the rest of their careers were they able to spend more time with Russell Westbrook. Anyway, a big three of Russell Westbrook, LeBron James, Anthony Davis is a damn super team. Don't overthink it. And when they win a ring, don't let all these media pundits that gave the trade a C- grade for the Lakers and said Bron was washed and they're shooting such a massive issue tell you it was always obvious or it's unfair. Hey, cat cameo. Because they're lying to you. They didn't always say that. Nobody's thought it would be easy. But of course, when the Lakers are great, it'll all become about how easy it was, how LeBron took shortcuts, how he was so lucky to keep getting a super team, so on and so forth. And about the shooting, this isn't combining Ben Simmons and Draymond also. I mean, Bron can shoot. AD can shoot. Russ can at least hit mid-range jumpers. They'll figure the spacing out. Russ will be an absolute force when Bron's off the floor. Super valuable in those at least 15-something minutes in the regular season. And the Lakers will win the title next year. Probably. At least that's my prediction. For now. Anyway, great trade for them. Terrible trade for the Wizards. Russell Westbrook, a Laker. Still can't really believe it. Thanks for watching Scout with Bryan. Make sure you thumb up, subscribe, Scout with Bryan, Instagram, podcast, and YouTube. Appreciate you tuning in.